had a blind German Shepherd,
Okay.
and that dog had more puppies than anyone, because all the dogs would be fighting, and he was blind. He just sniffed his way right in there. No fighting, no looking at other dogs. Just so my next door neighbor's dog was pregnant, and the guy comes over to the house and knocks on the door and says, "Your dog." He's talking to my sister. "Your dog got my dog pregnant." And my sister's like, we had a black lab and a Samoyed, which was a female. And she says, like, the black lab? And he's like, no, that other dog. And he's like, and he had a purebred dog. So she's like, the blind dog snuck in your yard and got your purebred dog. You know what I mean? That's just such a funny little blind dog. Winston. Winston. You remember
My
Winston?
girlfriend just named her puppy Winston.
Aww.
Winston and the dog before that was Baron von Strudelhound III.
Was it adoption?
He was a Vizsla and a black lab mix. Very intelligent dog. Smarter than I was. Oh, I let him take me. Good dog. soothing on the harmonium. Sagarnath Maharaj ki jai. How's everybody doing? Good? That last new moon was a whopper, wasn't it? Wow. So, let me start out with a story tonight. There was a great saint called Narada. And Narada, he really wanted to become enlightened really bad. So, Narada went to Krishna and he said, Krishna, could you teach me the essence of Maya? The essence of this goddess of illusion that we all live in this human world. Krishna said, I can't explain to you the veils of ignorance that Maya imposes upon the human ego and spirit, but you can experience it. And Narada's like, ooh, that'd be great. And Krishna says, we have to take a little trip, and I want you to come with me. We're gonna go visit this place. And Narada says, oh, I'd love to go along. He says, so they're crossing the desert, and they take a break, and Krishna says to Narada, he says, Narada, do me a favor and get me a cold drink of water. And Narada's like, okay. So we're gonna sit for a minute. So they sit down, cold drink of water. So just close your eyes for a minute. Narada closes his eyes. And Krishna says, okay, go get me a drink of water. And then all of a sudden, Narada is walking across the desert and he comes to a well. And there's this beautiful, beautiful woman working the well. The bucket goes down and the bucket comes up, and Narada's like, oh my God, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my whole life. Like, she must be a goddess. Like, Krishna has brought me to a goddess. This is just unbelievable. And then Krishna goes over, Narada goes over and he says, can I have a drink of water? And she's like, of course. She hands him the ladle and he has a drink of water. He's in love. From that moment on, she's all he can think about. He forgets about the water for Krishna, forgets about everything. And then he asks her, would you like to spend some time together? And she says, well, you have to meet my family first. It's the olden days. You have to meet my father first. And if it's okay with my father, so he goes to meet the father. The father loves him. Oh my God, he never leaves the house. They get married, they have children. It's beautiful. Soon after that, the father passes away and Narada inherits the farm and the cattle and all the acreage. And it's just wonderful. Narada's like, oh my God, I have a wife, 4 beautiful kids, this huge farm with cattle. Oh my God, I'm so blessed. And then all of a sudden a storm comes. And the river gets high and everything's getting washed away. And Narada grabs at his kids, and he's got 3 kids in one arm and the other one's on the house. And it falls onto a canoe, and he saves the child, and his wife's on his back. And it's just treacherous. And Narada's like, oh my God, and he can't hold on to the child. And the child goes downstream, and Narada's crying, and he's freaking out. And then his wife grabs at the children, go downstream, and him and his wife go under the water. And Narada's impending doom is right there. And in that moment, Krishna taps him on the shoulder and says, Narada, you can go get the water now. Get it?
Yeah.
This is Maya at her best. Maya at her best. We spend all our time making stuff up. And we do the same thing in the physical world. Like we make a lot of stuff up so we can feel a certain way and have a certain reaction. So then he taps, Narada on the shoulder and he says to Narada, do you get it? Do you understand Maya now? And Narada's like, yeah, but the family. The family. So our dreams are so real that we believe them to be true. As we're driving along, telling the story about what's going to happen, or how we see our life's going to happen in the future, and we're going to be homeless and lose everything, or we're going to be rich and all this stuff. It's all just illusionary. It's wonderful. It's like one of the most wonderful parts of being the human is that we get to make it all up. So Krishna says to Narada, if you want to be enlightened, you have to stop telling the story. The story must cease. Second you tell a story, you're in Maya. When you're in the moment and you're just here now, you're doing your cutting vegetables and you're in that moment. You know the feeling of being in the moment? You're in meditation and everything disappears and you're chanting and you're in the chant and then all of a sudden you lose it. Like when you lose it, it's like the most painful thing in the world is to lose the moment. It's like, oh no, I'm back in Maya again. Anyway, we live in the Hamptons, a lot of Maya going on out here. A lot of illusionary things, a lot of stuff that's real, but a lot of stuff's very illusionary. And then I talk to many people that make the story up of the people that they don't know, which affects them, and they get very upset about it. Yeah. Anyway, if you have any of that going on, stop telling the story. And the reason I tell the story, and I told that story, is because I found myself telling a story to myself. And I'm like, why are you telling a story to yourself? You know better. And it doesn't matter. I'm like Narada. Krishna, please. You gotta help me out here. You gotta help me out. And Krishna's like, chant God's name. It's the only way you're gonna get out of it. So, chant God's name over and over and over, because God's in the moment. You don't think, what's God gonna, I'm going to chant God's name 8 hours from now and it's going to be like whatever. It's just, you just do it, I think. That's how I do it. So, we're going to chant Om Guru. Om Guru. Let me look at the notes here because it's been a while. Om Guru. I think the harmonium knows the chants better than I do. Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya.
Power to you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. Muktanandaya, Muktanandaya. Muktanandaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. Mukte. Mukte, Mukte, Mukte. Mukti, Mukti. Oh, Sadhgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai. You know, when we were singing a cappella, I thought to myself, at any time, in any place, under any tree, by any stream, in any store, in any place that you were, you could be Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. You could sing so quiet, nobody could hear you, but your mind would be absorbed in Muktanandaya. And the bliss of Muktanandaya means the bliss of freedom. What a great mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. I honor the one who brings me the bliss of freedom, grants me. And you know who gives you this bliss of freedom? You know who does it? The self, the inner guru. The inner guru gives you the bliss of freedom, and the untethered conscious mind gives you annoyance. Tells stories about having babies, farms, cows, and such. The untethered mind, yes. Anyway, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Om Namah. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya. Take a deep breath in. And a long breath. Deep breath in. Long breath. Deep breath in and raise your arms and stretch. And exhale. Deep breath in and raise your arms and stretch and exhale. Okay, one more big one. Deep breath in and hold it. And Om Namah Shivaya. Oh my God, that was so good. Tonight's one of them nights I could just chant all night. Just never go home. Just never go home. We have 5 days left of the summer of love for the 100 days of love, which ends before summer ends. It starts before fall does, but it starts, whatever. Memorial Day to Labor Day. Make good use of this time. Get in the ocean, play in your garden, hug as many people as you can, as many friends. Tell as many people as you can that you love them. You do not want to have that, not telling people how much you love them, hanging over your head. You understand what I'm saying? You don't want it hanging. You don't want to be, man, I really wish I told them how much I love them. I love you and 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 you. Love you guys. Could you imagine being a musician and trying to have kirtan by yourself? Well, it's really good, but it's a lot better with other people. Live music it's the thing that takes us from the mundane to the ethereal without any problem. Oh, we will have kirtan on Memorial Day. Labor Day. I'm dyslexic. I'm even so dyslexic that I get my holidays back. I'm buying Christmas presents to Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? Right, Sita? Nobody told you they love you today. We love you very, very, very much. Thank you, Kara. Appreciate you. Myers on woodblock and Sita on drums. You guys on voice and love and kindness. Yay! Saginath Maharaj ki jai!
They're chanting in the streets all night long.
Who's that?
Lionel, Lionel Richie all night long.
Oh, yeah. That was so sweet. Oh, my God.
She's my only guy too. Kara just channeled Alice.
Really?
She thought it was her birthday, but she was like, Alice is coming. She's here. Alice is currently. Amen.
Did you know Alice? Never know Alice.
No, she just had her name pop in her.
Oh, wow.
he up at 78?
I heard somebody was going up there. He was like,
Joe's Beach.
oh, he was at Jones Beach. I heard that he's playing in, somebody was saying we're gonna go see him in upstate New York by Bethel.
He was strong. Shockingly for a 78
He
year old.
does good.